Hello, sixth graders. Today's lesson is going to be on how to add dialogue to your personal narratives. So there's two types of dialogue. The first is direct and the second is indirect. Direct dialogue is speech using the character's exact words, so you're going to use quotation marks to show it. Indirect is just a secondhand reporting of something that was written or said, but you don't necessarily need quotations because it's not exact. When writing a narrative essay, you're telling a story. So here's what you really need to know, okay? We are going to, for your personal narratives, I want you to climb inside of your story, okay? You're going to tell it from your point of view or whatever character you're using. So you have to think about what things that character would have been able to see in that moment, how they would have experienced it. So here is some things that you need to know. Okay, rule number 1, use quotation marks to indicate the words that are spoken by the characters. Help me, exclaimed the little girl. Okay, secondly, you always need to begin a new paragraph when the speaker changes. So if I'm talking and then you're talking, it's a new paragraph. You show that with an indent. If it goes back and forth, you can show that by just doing new paragraphs. You don't necessarily keep having to say who the speaker is as long as they've been introduced in the beginning. You can look through Bud Not Buddy and see that being done. Third rule, make sure the reader knows who is doing the talking. So you're going to do that by introducing the speaker in the beginning or after the dialogue saying who the speaker was. And 4, use correct punctuation marks and capitalization. We struggle with that as a class. Here's an example. May I buy a new pair of shoes? There should be a question mark. Then the end quotations. Lauren asked her mom, period. Okay, this tells us that Lauren is asking her mom this when she says it. You can read all these other details I'm not reading out to you. Use a comma if it's not a question or a exclamation point here and then say who it was. All right, here's an example. So I just typed this up right now as you went to recess. And so it's not perfect, but here is an example of a personal narrative that is a true story that happened to me. Okay? I'm going to call it Dinosaur. This was right where I wanted to be. The energy in the room went all the way down into your bones and built up like pressure until it popped like one of those little plastic toys you suction to a table. We had played 2 rounds and this was the tiebreaker. Now, 20 sweaty bodies were packed into Jensen's tiny apartment living room like the huddle of a football team before the last play of the game. The score was 6-6 and perhaps the most competitive game of catchphrase that has ever been played. The disc revolved around the circle as both teams shouted answers and jumped up and down in place. Whichever team was stuck with it when the buzzer sounded would lose, and with it go all the bragging rights that had been built up over the evening. There was a lot of smack talk. Okay, your turn. Jenny has the disc, and we have plenty of time. I calmed myself as Jenny was past the game. So this is me thinking, and even though I didn't actually say it out loud because it was my thoughts and it was a direct thing, I put it in quotes. It's a dinosaur, Jenny said, excited. I started yelling dinosaurs as fast as I could. Tyrannosaurus rex, raptor, Athagamus. My guesses were clouded with the shoutings of my 10 other teammates. Give us more clues, we yelled cooperatively. Ooh, see, here's a mistake. Change a speaker. It should be its own thing, okay? Jenny looked flustered. It eats plants, Jenny clarified. She looked nervous. We refined our guesses to herbivores. The buzzer sped up. So see how I'm setting up the mood and the tone with other things pertaining to the quotes, but I'm using the dialogue as though I'm there living it. What would I have heard? What did I see? What did I feel? Give us more clues, we yelled cooperatively. Jenny looked flustered. It eats plants, Jenny clarified. She looked nervous. We refined our guesses to herbivores. The buzzer sped up. Brontosaurus. That's not how you spell brontosaurus. Brontosaurus. Iguanodon. There we go. You can tell I don't write dinosaurs a lot. Followed Rick. The buzzer was racing. Agathamus, interrupted Joe. No, it's small, Jenny blurted in. We racked our brains for tiny herbivores and spewed them out of our mouths as fast as they could make it to the end of our brain cells. The circle had closed in, and we were just humped together in a large mass of bodies yelling at each other. This was it. The heat from our bodies was hovering over hovering in a cloud above us. The shouting of tiny herbivores was like Lee heard 3 doors down. I felt Calvin, oh my gosh, I can't read. I felt Calvin pushing me back as he got increasingly frustrated. Finally, it happened. The buzzer buzzed. And just like that, a silence fell upon us like a dark cave in the middle of the Arctic. All you could hear was the sounds of our embarrassment and disappointment. Even our opponents had no guesses to offer. What was it, Jenny? I asked, desperate for an answer. She sighed and shrugged, looking back at the disc. Thesaurus. And just like that, the room erupted with laughter. Miles fell to the ground. I grabbed my stomach and doubled over from the laughter I could not contain. Soon we were crying, jumping, rolling around, and collapsing of laughter. Jenny, Miles shouted, or screeched, a thesaurus is like a dictionary. I really should have added here, because he yelled, it's like a dictionary, not a dinosaur. And I could go on to conclude it. But that's my little story. It only actually took like 2 minutes to happen, but I wrote it out. It took a whole page and a half. And it's not letting me click that. Okay, so go ahead and try and look back at your personal narrative. Make sure that you have written in your dialogue correctly, and go back and add some figurative language using metaphors and similes, and just try to like repicture the whole event like you're re-going through it, describing everything to your audience. Go ahead and get to work.